Why are people so eager to forgive monsters? Like, they do not deserve your attention. They do not deserve your money. They
hmm
do not deserve your praise. None of these are things that people are entitled to.
Hey there, fellow nerds. Welcome back to another episode of The Present Illness, the podcast where two physicians try to make sense of a world that is, I don't even know what to call it anymore. Usually we say febrile, but I feel like we're also having febrile seizures now. I don't know what's going on. I'm Arghavan Salles, a surgeon scientist and your friendly neighborhood doom scroller in residence.
And I'm Alyssa Burgart, a pediatric anesthesiologist and bioethicist who tracks news and health law like their EKGs full of spikes and surprises. The Present Illness is where we dig into public health, politics, culture, and ethics with a scalpel in one hand and a meme in the other.
Big thanks to everyone out there listening or watching if you're seeing us on the interwebs. Extra love to our subscribers and those who follow us. And a warm welcome to anyone who just stumbled in from watching our president berate yet another woman journalist.
I saw that video. It was terrible.
Yeah, it was Caitlin Collins, for those who haven't seen it. And she's a reporter for CNN. And she was asking him about a very serious topic, which is the Epstein Files. And she was asking about Howard Lutnick and Elon Musk, two members of his administration, and that the fact that they are in the Epstein Files, and dared to ask him if he had read any of what related to them. And he said, no, of course not. I'm too busy. That's what a silly thing to say. And obviously, if it were a big deal, it would be headlines. It would have been headlines. So it must be nothing. And also now that, we've found out that I'm not in the files, let's just move on. I think it's time for us to move on. And then she asks about the redaction. She says, well, what about the survivors? Some of the survivors have been very upset about entire witness testimonies being redacted out. And he goes, well, why you tell me they think too much is taken out. Other people tell me they don't think enough has been taken out, because they released nude photos of these girls and women.
Terrible.
And their names and their
Terrible.
addresses. So he's making it sound like it's an equivocating, oh, nobody really knows what the right answer is here thing, when clearly they've just gone wrong in both directions. And then he just like goes off on her and says that he never sees her smiling. And, what, she's a young woman and he never sees her smile. He's known her for 10 years. He never sees her smile. And he goes off. I mean, he throws a tantrum about it. And she says, well, Mr. President, I'm asking you about survivors of sexual assault. But of course, it doesn't matter that it's obviously a very serious topik.
Well, and his response is essentially, you're ugly and I don't like that you don't smile at me. I mean, it's so stupid. Like,
and it's abusive behavior, right?
Oh, 1,000%.
It's not hard to imagine that someone who behaves that way to a reporter doing her job may also have abused other people in other contexts.
Well, and it's, you and I have talked a lot about how people with predatory behavior do so in an environment that makes them feel safe. And like, he just feels so safe. He's so safe.
Yeah, well, he knows nothing's going to happen because he's done
Nothing has.
so many times. Quiet Piggy, and there's a reel that somebody put together of like back to back numbers of inappropriate statements, many of them that he's made to Yamiche Alcindor, who's a Black journalist. Anyway, so the thing is, he said, now that we know I'm not in the files, let's move on. I believe his name is in the files like almost 40,000 times.
Yeah, he is in the files, guys. He's there. Just a little Control F. You too can see how many times
you don't
he's
even
in the
have
files.
to Control F. You just put it in the search box, and the DOJ pulls up every document and that's after they've redacted. That's after they've redacted. Anyway, okay, I know that's not our main topic, but it is infuriating.
Listen, we are glad you're here. As a note to new listeners, as you can tell, we often talk about topics that are intense. They can kind of be a lot. We did not intend to talk about SA and CSAM in the intro, but you've heard it now. So if you're going to listen to this in the car, you may want to, put it in your headphones, or don't listen with your little ones. So if this is an episode you need to step away from, we totally get it. But on to, I don't want, again, we talk about these tough topics. I also don't want to miss an opportunity. This week was Women in Medicine Day, Arghavan. So Happy Women in Medicine Day. You're an incredible woman, and I'm lucky to know you and to get to hang out with you.
Oh, likewise. Happy National Women Physicians Day. And this Sunday, February 8th, is National Black Women Physicians Day. So happy
Yay!
National Black Women Physicians Day to anyone out there listening.
Please reach out to all of your favorite Black physicians and thank them for their service.
Absolutely.
All right. We have a lovely listener shout out that I'd like to do from
Great.
Dr. Liana Gefter. And she wrote, I really enjoy the insights I gain from listening, and you somehow make these heavy topics manageable to digest. Kudos. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you for the kind comment, Dr. Gefter.
Yes. Um, okay, so Arghavan, we have two main topics that we're planning to discuss today, and one is the relation between healthcare workers and the Epstein files, and then the second topic we're planning to talk about is gender affirming care. But I thought we would start with the Epstein files.
Yeah, what a sentence. Healthcare workers and the Epstein files. I mean,
Well, because I'm going to be honest with you. I think that for people who still trust doctors and nurses to any degree would want to believe that there are no doctors or nurses in the Epstein files. But tell us why that's wrong, Arghavan.
yeah. So obviously, the DOJ released millions of documents
Hmm.
last Friday, and there's a lot. There's a lot. So people are learning a lot. There are a lot of things in there that are from tip lines that are not necessarily substantiated, but there's also sworn witness testimony, and there's the direct emails, as we've seen before, to and from Jeffrey Epstein and multiple people. So very quickly, folks in the medical community picked up on the fact that Peter Attia is in the files almost 2,000 times in this batch that was released. Yeah, the look on
That was my vomit
Alyssa's face.
face for
Yeah,
folks who are listening.
um, almost 2,000 times. And this is from the batch that was released on Friday. And the first thing I'll say that people picked up on is uh, you might call it crass, you might call it insensitive. I don't know. So trigger warning, as we've said. But Atia is in conversation with Epstein, and the email itself has a subject line, "Got a fresh shipment," and he has sent some kind of image. We don't see the images; they're not there. So he has sent some kind of image to Epstein. Epstein writes back apparently with an image of a woman. We don't see that picture, but that's what we're told is there. And then Atia writes back that pussy is low carb. Unclear about the gluten content. That's not word for word. If folks want it, I can pull it up. But that's what he writes back. And so you're already thinking, well, that's not good, but it's also not a crime to speak about women's bodies in that way. Um, but that's not, it turns out, the totality of it. I just pulled it up in case people want to know. The first email from Peter Attia that got a lot of people's attention was an email between him and Epstein where Attia says, so trigger warning again, this is crude, crass, inappropriate, dehumanizing language. He says, pussy is indeed low carb, still awaiting results on gluten content, though. So that's the first one that I think people, were understandably upset about. But you might think, okay, well, it's, locker room talk, as people like to say, but it's not nice. It's not professional. It's worth noting that all of the communications between Peter Attia and Jeffrey Epstein are well after 2008, which is when Jeffrey Epstein pleaded guilty to soliciting prostitution of a minor. Okay. So it's not, it wasn't like a hidden fact that
Who
he was a
knew?
child abuser. Yeah.
Who knew? Oh, it turns out people knew.
Yeah. People knew. Like,
Why are people so eager to forgive monsters? Like, they do not deserve your attention. They do not deserve your money. They
mhm.
do not deserve your praise. None of these are things that people are entitled to. We've also all been now habituated to the idea that, grab them by the pussy is something that apparently our president can say. So,
Right, right. So you might be like, okay, like it's bad form, but is it really a big deal? Well, then we have this email with a subject line, got a fresh shipment. And Peter Attia says, "You, the biggest problem with becoming friends with you." So we think he meant to say, the biggest problem with becoming friends with you. "The life you lead is so outrageous, and yet I can't tell a soul." Now that kind of implies, I think, that he knows, right, what Epstein does, that he abuses children, that he traffics women. Because what do you mean you can't tell a soul? Um, and there's other emails indicating that he wanted to visit the island. He has a back and forth with Jeffrey Epstein about other islands in the Caribbean. And Jeffrey's like, no, I don't go to those because there's other people there. And then he says, I need to visit sometime. Attia says, I need to visit sometime. Um, but perhaps the most concerning thing, at least for me when I became aware of this, is that in 2017, Peter Attia writes about this in his book. In 2017, July of 2017, he was in New York, and his wife and infant son were, I believe, in California. The son, 1 month old, stops breathing. Atia's wife, who is a nurse, does CPR. They have to admit this child, this newborn, practically newborn, 1 month old, to the ICU. She's asking Peter to come home. He says in his book that she was begging him to come home, and he did not. Now, somebody put together that based on these emails, what he was doing at that time was arranging a meeting with Jeffrey Epstein in New York, because he's got this in his book. He says it's July 11th that his baby has this emergency. And there's emails on July 12th and 13th between him and Epstein about what time they're meeting in New York. And he says in his book that he doesn't say, just to be clear, he doesn't say in his book that he was meeting Epstein. He just says that he was in New York for, quote, important work. And then he says in his book that he regrets that decision, that it was terrible judgment. He should have gone home. But again, enterprising folks out on the interwebs figured out the timeline. And it's not just bad decision making or bad judgment, it's abandoning your own family to meet with a child predator, which I find hard to move past for someone who is a physician. Now, for folks out there who are like, who is this guy anyway? Because he is very well known, but certainly not everybody knows him.
Oh, but
So
you've seen his book, whether you've read it or not, you have seen the cover.
probably it's called Outlive.
Mhm.
And he was on 60 Minutes. I don't remember exactly when, sometime in the last couple of months. So folks may have seen clips from that. He is a guy who went to Stanford Medical School, which is also where I went to, and so bummer all around on that one. And then he went to Johns Hopkins for a surgical residency that he did not complete.
Yeah, I
And
heard that. I didn't realize that he hadn't completed a residency. You sort of assume, and and again, this just shows how you really have to look up what people's credibility is. You know, I genuinely had just assumed that he had completed a residency. And if you think about, Casey Means, who's been nominated to be the Surgeon General of the
yep.
United States, another person who just didn't manage to finish their residency. They're not licensed to practice medicine.
Well, I think he
Um,
has a license. I didn't fact check if his website says he's licensed, but he's not board certified.
Sure. The reality is that if you've done an intern year
Mhm.
in most states, you can get a medical
Yep.
license to basically do general practice,
Yep.
but you're not board certified in anything, which,
Correct.
I don't know if do you remember when that happened to you, like when you were able to get your first permanent license?
Yeah. Mhm.
I just remember being like, "Are you guys crazy? Like, I'm not ready for this responsibility. I have years of training left to do before it will be safe for me to truly be out on my own,
Mm.
taking care of people." I just remember it being, like, such a profound responsibility, and
Mm.
it is really, you know, irrespective of all the terrible things we're specifically talking about this person, um, I'm struck by the absolute arrogance to to behave in this way.
Yeah, well, it's weird when you talk about arrogance, it's worse than what you just heard because, so he didn't finish residency, and then he went on and did some other things. If you look at his LinkedIn, like he did
Well,
some
and he's this,
consulting
like,
work and
longevity
wait,
influencer,
but
like,
he took
whatever.
a route to that. Like he went for several years and did like business consulting stuff, whatever. And then he kind
Not
of
practicing medicine.
correct. And then he, in recent years, has branded himself as a so called longevity expert. And it's important for folks to know there's no medical specialty in longevity, there is no residency or fellowship or certification. It's not really real. It's more akin to the wellness space that we've talked about many times, where it's
Mhm.
wellness influencers selling people supplements essentially. And anyway, that's kind of how he started to get famous, was doing all this longevity stuff. And according to a CBS article, he was charging at least 100,000 per person for his services, whatever his services are, as someone who's not an expert in anything and not board certified. So that's the background of who this guy is. I mean, he has a popular podcast. He's got his YouTube, his Instagram, his Twitter. He's got this book that came out and has done seemingly pretty well. He was just a couple of weeks ago named as a contributor to CBS News. Um,
Suck it, CBS.
yeah, the thing is, CBS News is not what it used to be. Folks may or may not be aware, and it's under, as they say, new management that doesn't really care so much about news or integrity. And interestingly, so once all this stuff came out over the weekend, I think he was the chief scientific officer for something called David's Protein. I only
Yes,
know they
yes.
exist because I see their ads everywhere. Anyway, they've removed him as their chief scientific officer. And apparently, what I read was that there are some discussion at CBS where Barry Weiss, who's the head now of their news, did not want to let him go. And folks at Paramount apparently did want to let him go, but apparently, as I read today, Thursday, February 5th, that they are keeping him on as a CBS News contributor.
But
Um,
Arghavan, why would you wanna ruin a good man's career?
yeah, I know these accusations of terrible behavior really get men down, don't they? They really have serious consequences. Um, I wanna add a couple more things. He even was close enough to Epstein that he stayed in one of Epstein's apartments in New York when he needed a place to stay. In one of his emails, I think, about that actually, about the apartment, he said something like, "I hope to see him soon. I go into JE withdrawal when I don't see him for a couple of weeks." He also, this is important because it comes up in his statement in response to all this. He, at one point, had bought tickets to go to Epstein's ranch. People may not be aware. Epstein has a large ranch called Zorro in New Mexico, where as many terrible things as you can imagine happened, allegedly. And so he went to as far as having bought plane tickets to go to the ranch, and that trip was canceled by Epstein. So let's fast forward to then Attia puts out a statement a few days ago about, everything that we've now seen and put together from the files. And, I will say, one, he's clearly a smart guy. Two, he clearly hired someone who's also very good at their job. So I think for many people, the statement has the appearance of like the things you want to see. There's some semblance of contrition, but not really real. When you look at it in detail, to me, it doesn't hold up at all, but I've had people in my comments telling me that they read his statement and he seems sincere, so they're ready to forgive him. I mean, he says things.
And, like, the parasocial relationships that people think they have with huckster these hucksters.
Mhm.
And, like, I just do not understand the eagerness to just, "Oh, well, he said he was sorry, so we're good to go. It's
Yeah.
okay if he raped a bunch of girls, but, it's fine." I mean, he said sorry.
Well, he didn't even say sorry is the thing.
Oh, come
That's why I said
on.
it was a statement. It wasn't an apology. I'll just briefly highlight some of the things that he said in his statement.
'Cause you wanna see my vomit face again? Is that why you're
I
doing
do
this
love
to
your
me?
vomit face.
Okay, fine, I'm ready. I'm gonna need to get a facial after this to, like, smoothen myself out. Okay.
He says, "Shortly after we met, I asked him directly about his 2008 conviction because he's gone on about how he didn't know. He didn't know Epstein was abusing children. So shortly after we met, I asked him directly about his 2008 conviction. He characterized it as prostitution related charges. In 2018, I came to learn this was grossly minimized." Now, here's the thing about that. He knew there was something because he asked, right? He asked. And then the answer he got was apparently sufficient. Like, I'm just gonna be honest, Alyssa, if you were like, "Hey, I had a conviction for prostitution," I would probably go home and Google it, to be honest. I'd be like, "I wanna learn a little bit more about what was going on there if I'm gonna be associating with this person repeatedly as they did for years." So,
Yeah.
either he wants us to believe that or he wants us to believe that either he didn't look into it at all. He just literally took Epstein's word for it, was like, fine, men solicit prostitutes, no big deal. Or he wants us to believe that he knew and now he's lying to us. Like, those are the options. And as someone who's presenting himself as a medical expert who like takes the insights from the medical literature and delivers them to people, synthesizes information, gathers together medical research. Look, if you couldn't look into who this guy was, you are not trustworthy to be giving people medical advice.
Can he even Google?
This is what I'm saying. So it's either that, it's either he wants us to believe he was so incompetent that he couldn't figure out, even though he knew there was a problem, that he couldn't figure out what the actual problem was, or that he knew and now he's lying to us and he thinks we're just going to go along with it.
Can't be both.
Can't be both.
I was just gonna say, on the longevity front, I did an interview sometime before the pandemic, and it was all about like the ethics of longevity and these billionaires that are like
Mhm.
investing all this money and spending all of this money
Mhm.
on people like Atia,
Mhm.
um, because they're like obsessed with living for a long time. And like, there's a reason that there are no actual medical experts in this because it's bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
you want to live a long time, like, be rich, live in a nice neighborhood because, like, your zip code is something that's
Mhm.
going to predict your lifespan more than so many other
Right.
things. You want people to live longer, like, get rid of pollution and make it easier for people to afford food and make it so that everyone has a place to live. Like, there are very fundamental ways to make it so that people live a long time.
Yeah, and it's not biohacking. It's as
Yeah,
you said.
no, it's not vitamins and, like,
Yeah.
meditation. I mean, I'm not saying that meditation is bad, but it's not like vitamins and, I don't know, whatever this crazy shit is that these people are doing, and there's a whole litany of insane things that people are doing
Yeah, it's
to
really
be
a lot
like,
of vitamins and supplements. But in reality, like you said, sleep, high quality, regular sleep, healthy food, time for exercise, lowering stress levels, like these are the things. And your genetics, and as you said, your neighborhood.
of
I mean,
course.
all these things together, there's not you can't biohack your way to longevity, which is what they want you to believe, but they want you to believe that so they can take your money.
They want people with money to believe that they can biohack their way.
That's right. So,
Yeah.
okay, I just want to point out a couple other things. So he says multiple, actually twice in the statement, that he was never on his plane, never on his island, never present at any sex parties. Actually, in another place, he says he was never at the ranch. But again, that may very well be true, but it's not for lack of trying. Like, we have the email for him saying that he would like to visit the island. We have the plane tickets that he bought to go to the ranch, and then Jeffrey's assistant canceling the trip. So, yeah, good for you, buddy, that you didn't go to these horrific places, but it wasn't because you didn't want to go.
I mean, I guess the claim to fame is Jeffrey Epstein didn't wanna bring him? I mean, is that what he's trying to use as an argument? Like, "Oh, well,
No,
Jeffrey
he
didn't
doesn't.
wanna hang
No,
out with me."
he thinks we didn't know that much. That's what he
Oh,
thinks, because he doesn't say, "Oh, blah blah." He doesn't address that Epstein actually blocked that. Um, and he does address the God of fresh shipment. I think you'll find this amusing. He says that that email was about, you'll never guess, metformin. That's what
I'm
he said.
sorry. Nobody is shipping metformin. It's like a $4 drug. I mean, come on.
But
Shut
also, who's
up.
who's sending an email to their like billionaire friend about a shipment of metformin?
Nobody. This is stupid.
Literally
What
nobody.
that's not even a good lie.
No, it's not a good lie. And he says, um, in this in his statement, he says that he had sent this email with a photograph of bottles of metformin, and that Epstein replied with the words, "Me too," and attached a photograph of an adult woman. Now, let's just imagine it was metformin. How does that make any sense? It makes me wonder if, in fact, you were sending a picture of metformin. I have to be honest, because what kind of person responds to a picture of medications with a picture of a woman? I know, and we know Epstein is not like a normal person, but still, it doesn't make sense.
And also, like, I'm sorry, just don't insult my intelligence.
Well, that's what he
That is
does repeatedly in this statement, and I think people will just I think genuinely, I think a lot of people won't pick up on it, but okay, the last thing I'll say about it, it's a very long statement, but the last thing I'll say about it is that he his main explanation seems to be, "I just didn't know what was going on. I was so naive, and there were fancy people and fancy places, and he was important, and so I just didn't know." Now, you might ask, how old was he? How old was Attia when all this was happening? Well, he was 42. I know, because he says, "Oh, I've grown so much in the last 10 years.
I
I would
mean,
never fall for this now." Okay, he's 52 now, so he would have been 42 at that time. And
what an insult to men in their 40s.
I mean, just an insult to humanity that we're supposed to believe that in your early 40s, you didn't know better than to hang out with a child abuser.
And that's your excuse.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. Okay.
forget it.
Sorry. Okay. I know I said the last thing, and I know I do
Well,
this all the time. I have one really last thing.
okay,
Look on your face.
I'm gonna hold you to it. We
Okay,
got
no,
a schedule.
for real, for real. The last thing, the nail in the coffin is in 2018, November 2018, Julie K. Brown, who I'm sure I've mentioned here before, she's a reporter for the Miami Herald. She put out the first of a series
Oh,
of
right.
investigative reports,
Mhm.
really exposing a lot of
Mhm.
Epstein's behavior and what happened with that sweetheart heart deal that he got in 2008. So there's an email in these files from Attia reaching out to Epstein after this saying, "Hey, any fallout from that article?" Not like, "Hey, bro, we can't be friends anymore," or just like not communicating with him. No, he's like, "Hey, any fallout?" To which Epstein says, "Zero." And by Attia's own admission in his statement, he continued to meet with Epstein in person through spring of 2019. So months after this. And he had clearly, as evidenced by his emails, knew what was in that article and continued to meet with this person. And he says in his statement that I told him directly he needed to accept responsibility for what he did. And of course, people are like, "Where? Show us. Where did you do that?" Because it just sounded like you were interested in whether it was going to reach you. That's how I interpret that email anyway. Any fallout from that article is like, how's it going to affect me as someone who's affiliated with you? But I'll just keep hanging out with you for a while until you were practically in prison, right? Like he was arrested, I believe, in the summer of 2019, and Attia says they were hanging out through spring of 2019. Anyway, all that to say, I don't buy it. Nothing in that statement is credible to me, and it is unlikely he will face any real consequences for any of it.
Terrible. Terrible. Um, Screw that guy.
I mean, there really should be accountability for everyone who was interacting with Jeffrey Epstein after that conviction in 2008.
What I am gonna be looking for and will be 0% surprised if something comes out is if Atia if he gets accused of SA.
Yeah,
I will be 0% surprised if that is what happens.
same, same.
So, TBD.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye out. I mean, he says that in his statement, he says he never saw young girls with Epstein, but it's been documented many times that he had photos of these young girls all over his houses. And Attia stayed in the apartment, also went to the mansion in New York multiple times. So I think he just thinks we're not intelligent enough to realize there's a difference between, oh, you didn't see a girl in person, but you saw all those photos, and we're supposed to believe you didn't know. Anyway, okay, let's talk about gender affirming care.
That sounds great. There are 2 bills right now that are open for public comment, so I wanted to bring that to our listeners' attention. So, as you all have probably noticed for the last several years, gender affirming care for minors has become one of the favorite dog whistles of the right wing movement, especially. Uh, it's a very small population of people who are incredibly marginalized, and getting care of any care is really difficult. And being treated with dignity and respect is unfortunately remains a huge problem for people who are trans and non-binary, and so it's terrible that this population has been attacked. Simultaneously, folks may have noticed, I'm sure you have, the attacks, for example, on you know uh pineapple. I'm really having like some word finding difficulty here.
Happens.
um People have likely very much noticed the attacks as well on, drag performances and
Mhm.
people who, really are demonstrating in a very visceral way how gender is a performance. There's so many things about gender. It's about the costume you put on. It's about the way we do our hair. It's about what you make your face look like. And so anyway, so gender affirming care for minors has become this dog whistle. And early on, there were many people who were supportive of trans and non-binary kids being like, hey, we need to protect these kids. We need to protect trans kids. And folks in the right wing really turned that around to say, oh, we need to protect trans kids from you people who are butchering these kids and doing things to them. It's all very ridiculous. Um, so there's two main ways that the federal government is trying to make it so that it is absolutely impossible for any trans or non-binary kid to receive pretty much anything except psychotherapy. And so the two things are, there's one that's a hospital ban, and what this would do is any children's hospital or any hospital that provides gender affirming care to minors. And this is not just surgeries, this is surgery, this is hormones, any sort of treatment that is considered gender affirming care would be banned, and these hospitals would lose access to CMS funding. And we've talked a lot about CMS funding and how important it is. Many children's hospitals cannot stay open without CMS
Mhm.
funding. Many children's hospitals rely on CMS funding for, 40 to sometimes 50% of their just operating costs because there's so many children, because we've made a political choice in this country that we have not made it easy for families to be
Mhm.
able to afford healthcare for their children. And so many, many families rely on CMS funding through CHIP in order to get services for their kids. And so the one bill bans hospitals. So if you are a hospital that provides any of these services, you will be barred from receiving any CMS funding for anyone. And so that's basically putting children's hospitals in a bind where it's like, well, you can either do the thing to protect this incredibly vulnerable, tiny, marginalized
Mhm.
community, or you can not be able to take care of the vast majority of your patients. And so this is one of these ways that trans kids are being used as this terrible, terrible bargaining chip
Mhm.
to force hospitals to not take care of their patients, to not provide evidence based care to these kids. The other ban that is coming through is actually specifically on Medicaid and CHIP funding.
Mhm.
And so it would make it so that it is impossible for any of these services to be reimbursed by Medicaid or
Mm,
CHIP
mhm.
funding. And so this is really a two-pronged attack to make it so that basically poor kids won't be able to get any services at all because CMS will not pay for them, and they will stop any other children
Mhm.
whose
Mhm.
parents have the resources to be able to overcome the limitations on funding. Those kids won't be able to get services either. And so, it's a very coordinated plan to make it so that it is banned. The other thing that the hospital ban does, it actually makes it a federal offense for a clinician to provide any gender affirming care, because they want to put us all in jail. Um, there's a list that the FBI is keeping where you can like report doctors who
Mhm.
provide gender affirming
Mhm.
care to minors. And so one of the things that has been used to fuel both of these bills to ban gender affirming care for minors is an HHS commissioned report that was on gender dysphoria. And shockingly, it was, the deck was stacked against gender affirming care by ensuring that all the people who helped put together that report were basically anti-trans
Yeah.
activists.
Yeah.
And that includes the ethicists who were put into that group in
Mhm,
order to
mhm,
make those
mhm,
recommendations. And so the takedowns of this report on scientific grounds and on clinical care grounds have been vicious because it is a terribly poorly researched document that is just does not stand up to even the smallest amount of scrutiny. But there's an entire section there on ethics, and it was written by two people who are ethicists, and they are both anti-trans activists.
mhm,
So one of them is a adult palliative care physician on the East Coast, and one of them is a philosopher who is opposed to transgender care, as well as that person's sibling is also an anti-trans activist academic. And so, these people, from what I can tell, were selected because of their
mhm,
previously very prominent. I mean, this is what has made these two people frankly famous. One of them is known for um, promoting the relationship between spirituality or religion and medicine, which I don't have a problem with doctors being religious. I'm perfectly fine. I do have a problem with doctors imposing their religious
mhm,
beliefs on other people. I
mhm,
don't
mhm,
think that's appropriate.
mhm.
um, so anyway, the ethics section in this is like such a joke to me as a pediatric bioethicist. And so several very prominent pediatric bioethicists that I am very fortunate to know, um, six of them and me, we got together and wrote an op-ed really going through the ethics section of this document and
Mhm,
being like, here's how you apply basic pediatric bioethics principles. Because also neither of the people who wrote the ethics section on care for minors actually takes care of children. Like
mhm,
one of them doesn't take care of patients, and one of them is an adult doctor.
mhm,
And so neither of these people actually have the expertise in the area where they had this big responsibility.
mhm.
And they frankly did a pretty crap job. I mean, it doesn't stand the things that they argued are just they really have made this argument that, well, we don't have enough information, and so we shouldn't let anybody have access to this treatment
Mm.
because, we need to have the utmost caution and we shouldn't let anybody have any of these services because it might be harmful. Despite the fact that there's actually, growing evidence year over year that like if you provide a supportive environment, if we have kids get the support that they need in order to explore their gender identity, to allow them to delay puberty for a period of time while they go through this exploration, that like these are actually things that are really important and they reduce the risk of suicide. So the idea that we should take away these things that absolutely benefit some patients because there is this idea that they have that it's harmful because they've already decided that it's harmful.
Right, that's the thing, that's not a scientific position, it's not a scientifically backed position, I should say, and, as we've seen, with what they've put out regarding vaccines, for example, like, they're not really this HHS is not really concerned about what data suggests, what the literature shows, they're really much more concerned about pushing a specific agenda, and so it makes sense that they wouldn't have people who know what they're talking about write that section or write, in fact, the entire report, or maybe it's written by it's some chat GPT, I don't know. But, it's that part is not surprising to me, although it is extraordinarily harmful to have
Mhm.
done this because, one of the things you kind of briefly touched on is what I think there's a lot of propaganda out there about what gender affirming care looks like for
Mhm.
minors because it's mostly supportive care, right? And
Mhm.
hormones and things that are all reversible
Mhm.
and they, as you rightfully pointed out, are associated with a lower risk of those children dying, which I
Yeah.
think is what we want. We don't want children dying, right? I know that might be a
Yeah.
radical position, but I don't want to see
As
children dying.
as a
So,
person who spends my clinical time trying to help children not die, there is no higher calling than if you have a way to help a child not die, you should help them do that thing.
yeah, exactly. And then they are, instead of reading these data and understanding the benefit of just supporting people who are not feeling well, right? They're feeling quite unwell. That's why they're seeking care. Instead of doing
Yeah.
that, they are trying to demonize this very small group of people. And you know who is not in the Epstein files? Trans people, drag
No drag
queens.
queens found.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's after all
Yeah.
this hullabaloo about, bathroom safety, whatever nonsense they're putting out there, it's not, and we've always known this, but if you just take this as a piece of data of like who's in the Epstein files, it's a bunch of, as far as we can tell, cishet dudes, mostly white. Although Deepak Chopra's in there. I don't know if you saw it. Anyway,
Oh, I
there's,
did.
there's
I've
a
always thought he was skeevy, but like, just more confirmation. Well, so, and one of the things to your point about how is it that evidence is being applied? And like they have a statement in this report that basically says like common sense is enough for us to know that this is harmful. That's all we need to show that this is harmful is common sense. But we're going to hold evidence of benefit to a high technical bar. I mean, that is an unreasonable way to think about
yeah, you can't compare
benefits and
common sense
burdens.
on one side with research on the other. That's
Well, also, common sense to who? Because I
yeah.
don't share your sense of common sense.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of common sense, okay, just because we've talked about this before, I don't know if people saw Ballerina Farms, Hannah Nealman. They were one of these raw milk people, selling raw milk to people, which are HHS
I heard they got
secretary.
shut down.
Exactly, because guess what? It was contaminated. People were getting sick. Um, anyway, so if you think, because I mentioned that because a lot of people think it's common sense. Oh, cows are natural. Raw milk is
Like,
natural.
no,
No, there's
no,
a
freaking
reason we came out with pasteurization, which is that
they
people
roll
were
around in their
dying.
own shit on the ground. What has no one had been to a farm?
Yeah,
This is come on, guys. Like,
I know.
go to a farm.
Well, who was it? Now I'm gonna forget who it was, but somebody had said, "Well, it's fine. I go to the farm, I look at the cows, I meet the cows, then I feel good about the milk." And then somebody else I saw recently was like,
And you feel good about it until you get Shigella.
"Well, like, have you seen the cows though?" Their
Shigatoxin.
point was like what you were saying, like the cows are disgusting. If you've seen the cows, you should want
I mean,
your milk to be
listen,
pasteurized.
I love a cow. I think it's lovely to be near them. I think they're beautiful creatures. I do not personally eat them. And but also like I love my dog, but she licks her own ass. Like
Yeah, they're not really exactly living up to our sanitary standards. Which
so
is why
listen,
we
I
have
want to get
pasteurization. Anyway, carry on.
well, so there's a couple things I want to talk
Yeah.
about with in terms of gender affirming care because I think it's really important. And so there's actually several things that Maha we've had a lot of problems. And you talked last week actually about how RFK Jr. was like berating somebody in Germany about
Yeah.
their healthcare and like, why are you getting in between a doctor and why is the government getting in between a doctor and their patient? And
Uh-huh.
it's like, well, that's exactly what these two bills are doing is by literally inserting the government in between patients, families who care about their children, and physicians and nurses who want to take care of these kids and so, social workers to I'm so fortunate that like I was able to practice during a time when our gender affirming care program was really strong and was able to function in its full capacity. And it was fascinating because we actually had them come and give a presentation to our ethics committee because this was like kind of before it was really in the news and all this stuff. I was like, oh, just like we'd like to hear about your practice and understand how you're approaching this as you build this program. And like they just had such a fabulous way of really wrapping these families in support
Mm.
so that they could go through this period of exploration together
Mhm.
to decide what was right. And
Mhm.
it wasn't the government coming in and deciding what was right for them. It was patients, their parents, and their clinical team all working together to support that family, to make sure that they had the resources that they needed so that they would have access to the best, most up to date evidence in that particular population. And that's really what's being taken away here. The other thing is it's also this like complete dismissal of the role of emerging adolescents and their emerging autonomy.
Mhm.
And, adolescents should have a voice in their identity and in their care.
Mhm.
And to basically take away those opportunities from trans kids, it's wrong and it is deeply, deeply harmful to these kids. And so I will put a link to the op-ed that we wrote. Um, I hope that you all, will take a look at it. I think that we've done a really straightforward job of explaining. I mean, frankly, this is the deal. I do not think that it is. It is. Let me rephrase that. It is completely inappropriate at this point to say, well, should trans people exist? That is an inappropriate an undignified comment that diminishes the value of trans people in our communities who have always existed.
Mhm.
It is inappropriate. And yet, that is what this document, this HHS report is trying to say. They're trying to say, well, these people shouldn't exist, and we want to use psychotherapy to make it go away. I mean, it's just back to like sending kids off
Mhm.
to camp to like pray the gay away. It's
Mhm.
ridiculous, and it's very harmful. What we should be doing is encouraging genuine shared decision making by making sure that families and clinicians are able to access each other and able to have open and honest conversations without worrying about the government coming into the exam room.
Mhm.
It's crazy. So, there's two things I really hope for those of you who have any sort of feeling, whether it is that it's specifically about gender affirming care, but if you want to be able to have the government not interfere in the decisions that you want to make with your healthcare provider, I really urge you to think about how these bills would also impact the ability to do that in the future. Because I don't think these bills are I think these bills are the beginning. I don't
Mhm.
think these are the end. So their public comment is open. The deadline to submit public comment for both of these bills is February 17th, if at 5 p.m. Eastern time. If you wait until the 17th, the websites can get kind of bogged down. So I really encourage folks to do that a little bit earlier if you have the capacity to. And then my friend Matthew Cortland, who is a lawyer and does just incredible advocacy work online, has put together an exquisite, truly an exquisite commenting guide. I had reached out to them and I had said, "Hey, I'm putting together these comments, and I feel like my colleagues in academia, like we're not exactly sure the best way to
Mhm.
approach this. Like, how should we be referring to
Mhm.
ourselves?
Mhm.
Should we submit comments together? Should we submit them separately? Like, what's the best way to do it?" And in their absolute brilliance, they put together this commenting guide that has something for everyone.
Mm.
So you can kind of go through it. They have an explanation of what it is that, like, kind of a summary of the issues. And then they also have a guide kind of for, if you're a trans person, here's something that you can do. If you're a family member of somebody, this is something that
Mhm.
you can write
Mhm.
about. And they have specific sections for clinicians and for academics. And so I learned so much
Mm.
about how to do these comments more effectively. And so I'm so appreciative. If any of you, the commenting guide is open. I will put a link to it in the show notes. Super helpful. And I really hope you all will take the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing about that, and thank you for writing the comment, or the op-ed that you did, and, do you wanna talk about the backlash?
Oh, okay, guys. I've reached, like, what is it called? I'm not a gamer, but like, what is it called when you level up? You know, Um, it turns out that sound ethical reasoning is terrifying to far right influencers. And so I have the badge of honor now of having been featured, having my face featured in Libs of TikTok. So thanks a lot, Libs of TikTok, which, by the way,
Wonderful.
is run by this like bananas lady. How do you say her
I
name
think it's
again?
Kaya Reichik.
Kaya Rachik. Yeah.
So, for folks who don't know, Libs of TikTok, it doesn't stand for liberals, just so you know. It's
Well, it's like own the libs. We're going
yeah,
to own the libs.
they're terrible. They have called schools asking to, do harm to the folks at the schools. They've incited people to actually threaten schools, because of bathrooms, having all gender bathrooms, for example. They're just a horrific organization, if you can even call them that. But they love to target people who care about human rights, as Alyssa does. So I'm so sorry that they featured you. I agree, it's kind of like a badge of honor. Like you've made it. You're doing the right thing so much that they noticed, and now they're mad. And I'm hopeful that it doesn't bring a lot of distress to you, that whatever
Thank you.
attention they're trying to send your way.
Well, you and I have both faced at different times in our lives and careers online backlash for trying to do and say the thing that elevates the human dignity of people around us. So, um, I've decided I'm going to buy a piece of jewelry to commemorate it. I'm thinking maybe like a vintage charm or something.
I love it.
So, if folks have ideas, let me know. Send me a link. Send me an Etsy link. I don't know.
I love that. Yeah, I look forward to seeing what you buy. You deserve all the things. Thank you for your
Well,
advocacy.
that's the perfect, transition, I think, to take 2 and call me in the morning. What do you think?
Perfect. I love it. I'll go first. So one of the
Great.
things that I really appreciated in the last week is the Grammys. I'm not like a big,
Yes.
I'm not like obsessed with the Grammys or anything, but I liked that this particular Grammys had multiple people getting up on stage and saying with their whole chest that we don't want ice, that we want to abolish ice, we want to get rid of
Mhm.
ice out. We want to protect our communities. And I loved that they were so vocal about it. Folks like Bad Bunny and Billie Eilish and just multiple people, Kehlani, um, they just did not hesitate. And there were a lot of people
Mhm.
wearing ice out pins, including Lady Gaga. And we have been dealing with so much awfulness that it was just refreshing to see so many people reiterating those messages and being very well received, by the way, by the audience. The applause was thunderous, and of course, Bad Bunny winning so many awards and then
Mhm.
giving an acceptance speech in Spanish.
Oh.
Take that. Take that, right wingers. I loved it so much. And I believe he's I'll fact check myself in the show notes. I believe he's the first Latin artist to win the album of the year, which is an incredible accomplishment, especially in this environment where people are literally being pulled off of the streets because they look like they might be Latina of any kind.
Yeah.
So that just
Also,
felt especially nice.
you and I are in the Bay Area. Bad Bunny's gonna be in town.
That's
He's gonna
right.
be playing the Super Bowl. It's gonna be here, in San Jose. So I am just delighted that he will be gracing our fair city,
Yes.
and he will be just, singing to the people in Espanol.
Yeah, I'm hopeful there will be not a word of English in the whole halftime show. Josh Johnson, I know I wanna hear your thing, but I wanna just say real quick, Josh Johnson had a great he's a comedian. He had a great piece where
I love him.
he was talking about, you know, the Super Bowl and the halftime shows and how some segments of our population have been upset at how black the Super Bowl halftime show has been. And so he was talking about the Kendrick Lamar halftime show, which of course was amazing. And then he goes, "I bet they thought that was as black as it could get. And now they
I've
got
seen
someone who
this.
won't even speak English."
I saw that skit and I laughed so hard, and I have watched it more than once, so we will definitely put that in the show notes as well. Love
Perfect.
Josh Johnson.
Yes, he's amazing. Well, I think that's a good note to oh, no, yours. I'm so sorry.
Oh, Arghavan?
I'm like in La La
You were
Land.
like, "You're getting a vintage charm, we're done."
I am losing it.
Well, okay, at the risk of a little bit of ASMR, which, I hope it's not too aggressive on the microphone. My favorite seasonal candy is in stock, and
Oh.
I will tell you I look forward to this all year. This is my favorite. These are
Ah.
Cadbury mini eggs. Um, like, I actually buy a lot of them so that I can ration them out as long as possible. Only downside is that last year, my kids also discovered how good they are, and so, I'm gonna have to, I think, maybe up the candy hiding for the future. But that's one of my favorites, and as a close second, I have always loved these, like, Cadbury cream eggs.
Mhm.
'Cause they look like an egg inside, and I think that's very clever. I will say the American ones don't taste quite as good as the ones from UK,
Mhm.
and when I was growing up in LA, I used to babysit for a family that was from the UK, and so if they needed to go back to the UK, they would bring me back, like, a little
Mhm,
sampler
mhm,
of Cadbury chocolates. Just delish.
mhm,
Love it.
mhm. Fantastic. I love those. Uh,
Alright.
I think I've had those. I've definitely had Cadbury eggs, but I think I've had the little mini ones as well.
They're
Um,
just like a delightful treat.
yeah, they have that, like, candy shell coating, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
it's like a
little
nice little
crunch.
crunch.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, on that note, that's it for this week's episode. If you didn't like what you heard, this has been the Peter Attia Drive podcast. If you liked
Ugh.
it, don't forget to subscribe to The Present Illness. Please leave us a review or rating and tell people you know to listen in as well.
Yeah, share it with your friends. We're gossipy and fun. You can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. We're at The Present Illness, and you can stay on top of all of our TPI-related news.
We will be back next week with more headlines, hot takes, and doom scrolling, hopefully wrapped in some laughs.
So until then, agitate, hydrate, take a nap. Oh, a nap is so good. We'll see you next time on The Present Illness. Production by Arghavan Salles and Alyssa Burgart. Editing by Alyssa Burgart. Social media by Arghavan Salles. Original music by Joseph Uphoff. Don't take your medical advice from random people on a podcast. This show's for informational purposes. It's meant to be fun, and it's certainly not medical advice. So please take your medical questions to a qualified professional.